Hello, everybody. There seems to be this annoying little freeze that starts at the beginning of a stream. But anyhow, I think we are safe to go now. Okay, I thought we'd have a look at Alex Jones's chart because he's been in the news, and I thought his chart was a wonderful example of how astrology works simply because of the way all the transits are playing out. So I'll start by saying I am a fan of Alex Jones. I was introduced to him actually, strangely enough, by the Ian Collins show on Talk Sport. And I think sometimes Ian used to invite these people on to kind of hold them up as a figure of fun and mock them, and he thought the audience were all laughing at them. But actually, the audience were thinking, wow, this guy's got something interesting to say. And we went and looked him up, and I suppose a lot of us have been fans. There we go. So one of the products. So, yeah. Now, yes. So anyway, yeah. So that was when I discovered Alex Jones. That was probably around, I think it was 2008. And I've been dipping in and out ever since to his shows. And I'd say I do tune in fairly regularly. He covers a very broad spectrum of things. And I'd say he has... Yeah, a lot of people don't feel he goes right to the heart of the matter. But look, he's giving you all the information you need to make your own decisions. And I think he says on his show, he's not the ultimate truth. He's a way to the truth. So he's just putting out a lot as he discovers it. And he has done some amazing research. So a couple of things I wanted to say before I get going on Alex is, a lot of people talk about Alex Jones was always right, and they talk about him in terms of the information he's put out. But I'm going to say that I admire him a lot for the amazing way he's run that business, because he's running an enormous operation, and you can see the incredible amount of stress on him. So he employs around 100 people. Imagine being Alex Jones and finding 100 people that you can employ that aren't like Soros spies or libtard spies. How can you find 100 people you trust? I mean, that's hard enough as it is. He must have immense problems with people who get in there and maybe try and get dirt on him and stuff. That's a challenge. I think he's done really well with Owen Schroyer and Harrison Smith. They do excellent shows. It's such a professional setup for something that isn't at all mainstream. It's the other thing I admire is he has to deal with so much. He's got to deal with the products. He designs the products. He does most of the clips for the advertising. He has to continue brainstorm new products. Then he's got the problem with the payment gateways because he can't do PayPal, and there's so many different companies and banks who won't deal with him. So just getting the payment for your products is a major problem. Finding suppliers, dealing with it, sourcing these things. Oh my God, what a headache is that with supply chain problems. Then he's got the infrastructure. I think he showed once behind the scenes, there are meters of cable everywhere. There's just passengers in cable because he's got to pay for his own satellite uplinks. He's got to pay for the bandwidth. He's got to have all the front end, the back end technology, the amount of technological support and know-how, and finding people who can run the whole technical side of his business, because he can't tap into any mainstream technologies that are available out there because it's InfoWars. So I think in terms of the way he runs this business, from being an employer of many people, managing the content, managing the products, I guess they're family members that help on board, whatever. And then he's always got these legal lawsuits on him as well. So it's a big thing that he's taken on. I do feel he's an enormous personality. He's taken an awful lot onto his shoulders. He's certainly done far more good than anything. And I just wanted to talk about, the lawsuit. So basically, the long and short of it is he's being sued because he put out a conspiracy, about Sandy Hook, and the parents of the children were offended and upset. He caused them grief and trauma, whatever. Yeah, but what about all the people that talked about 9/11? Can they all be sued because they caused upset to the families of 9/11? For all the people out there who mentioned various what were called conspiracy theories about COVID, can they be sued by anyone who had a relative that died of COVID? You see, again, this has opened up an enormous precedent that anyone who is offended, suffers any form of injury at all by hearing a non-mainstream, non-government narrative can sue. It's another way of shutting down free speech. It's insidious, it's ghastly and nefarious. Then we had, as a lot of you would have seen, the Lawrence Fox tweeted something, and a ex-army vet guy in the UK, I think he was in Aldershot, he retweeted it. He had about 6 cops. There were a lot. I don't know if it was 6. There were a lot of cops outside his house, and he was arrested. And when he asked why, oh, his tweet made someone feel anxious. Okay, right? I mean, how wide is that? You tweet someone that made someone feel anxious. Can you see people are going to have to self-censor? People are going to be so confused at what the law is because it's so wide and so open to interpretation. They're not going to want to speak. This is the big shutdown of speech. Now think of this, prior to the internet, there was no way people could get messages out there. You had to find a publisher, you had to find an agent, and they were only going to publish stuff of a certain narrative, weren't they? You couldn't just open up a TV station or a radio station. There were massive amounts of regulation. No ordinary person could start a newspaper. But the advent of the internet means that anyone like me sitting in the kitchen can put out wonderful content. And initially, the powers that should not be, the elites or non-elites as I call them, were quite okay with this because they just didn't think that people were going to be that interested in content put out by the average Joe in their kitchen or garden or whatever it was. They still thought that people were going to be glued to these marvelous fancy studios and this high-tech production style things of BBC and whatever. They thought that would wow people and the majority of people would be glued to that. But in truth, that's such poor quality. It's so jaded, it's boring, it's dull, it's inaccurate, and people know it's propaganda. And when ordinary people were allowed to speak, show their expertise, get around all the gatekeepers that had been suppressing so many people with information, there was an explosion. And in general, the public, or a large, well, it's a small proportion, but it's a significant proportion, absolutely loved it. I mean, I don't blame them. I mean, for God's sake, in the UK here, to be in television is like waiting for dead men's shoes. I mean, we'll need Armageddon to get rid of Kay Burley on Sky News. Then, for example, guys, there's this woman. I mean, this woman is average in every way. I'd say below average, but I don't want to be too nasty. Lorraine Kelly. She's been on a television morning show, like a mini chat show, ever since I came to England. I mean, it's like nearly 30 years, and she's still on there. And recently someone stood in for her, and it turned out the viewers like, but I mean, how can they keep the same person? It's stale as hell. Then we've got these other clowns, Holly Willoughby and Philip Schofield. I mean, talk about a below average intellect, And these are not entertaining, witty, vibrant, interesting people, but they host everything. They host a morning show, then they host an ice skating show, then they do a bit of something else. They get circulated everywhere in TV. Once people get a foot in the door in UK, you never stop seeing them. I mean, they virtually, get to the age of like Bruce Forsyth, who was like Moses' age, before you can get rid of them. And I mean, anyway, that's just a slight different tangent, which I should stop on that. But it just shows that, of course, people were excited about these new things rather than these stale, boring old people that we've had to put up with on Sky News and BBC, the same boring old dross people year after year. I mean, ugh. But of course, they're very safe. Okay, here's Alex's chart. Now, I don't know his time, but I'm kind of guessing he's Aries rising, and I'm going to tell you why, because he is quite aggressive, and he comes over as quite abrasive to a lot of people. When he describes his childhood, he sounds like he was a very fast starter, like he was, he was 5 years old, he'd already read the full every naval history book. Okay, slight exaggeration. I think by 13 he'd read every naval history book, and, in his family he was voraciously devouring information on geopolitics at a very young age. Aries rising are very big, very early self-starters, so that matches Aries. Then he was a bit of a wild one. He was a bit of what we would call a ducktail. In youth, he got into a lot of fights, and look at that, Chiron, very close to what I've set as the ascendant in Aries, and he did have some quite bad altercations with a guy who he went into a coma in hospital because they were bullying him, and he fought back. So he was quite, I think the Afrikaans word is bekleierig, which I don't know a better English word for it. So he was quite feisty. And also he's got leadership, he's driven, he's very intrepid, he's got a huge amount of energy and drive, he explodes energy. I think it's a bit much for some people, but there you go. So I thought the Aries rising fitted. There you go, got Mars in Taurus in the second house. That shows his business ability that I was talking about, and this huge amount of persistence, determination. I mean, the guy is dogged. He never gives up. That's so Mars in Taurus, isn't it? He's there for the fight. There's so much grit going on, which shows you there. Okay, he has Sun conjunct Jupiter. By the way, just in case, he's 11 February 1974, just in case you know. And I've put this as Austin, but I don't know if he's actually born in Austin or Dallas. Okay, so he's got Sun conjunct Jupiter. So he's got a bit of luck going his way. This gives him his chutzpah, again, his energy, his optimism, and also the spiritual side of him. Because as you know, he is very inspired by spirit, by Christianity. He's got an innate belief and a faith which keeps him going. So I think it's very kind of appropriate that he should have Sun conjunct Jupiter. And being an Aquarian, of course, he's controversial, he's into conspiracies, he's open-minded, there's nowhere he won't go. He's got this adventurous spirit to him, and he's daring and audacious, and he doesn't care about trying to tackle authority. I think that's given him a lot, and we know he gets on very well with his father. He's like this with his dad. Dad is a huge mentor to him. In fact, his dad, as a gifted student, when he was at university at UT, kind of learnt a lot of this stuff because he was almost recruited into it. So you see, the dad is a mentor and inspiration, someone who almost like laid a little bit of the way for Alex, even though, you know, being Aries, he had a mind of his own, Aries rising. Had a mind of his own, and he was going at it from early on. Also shows, look what he's achieved. You know, he's like 48, and he's achieved a huge amount of stuff, as Aries do, because, you know, they burn out. Like, yeah, he's nearly burnt out, but sure, they burn at all cylinders, don't they? Aries rising. Here we see he's got Venus retrograde in Capricorn in the 10th house. I think that indicates his reputation, which on one hand, Venus being retrograde is very bad in certain quarters, but obviously very good in other quarters. There's the two sides to it there. Also represents his conservatism, and where he's got like right-leaning conservative values. Okay, here we've got Neptune in the house of other people's money. I think this represents numerous money dramas, money problems, and a certain amount of maybe stuff we don't know. There's lots of secrets going on there. I suppose he deals in secrets. His whole life is investigating secrets. So I suppose Neptune Sagittarius in the 8th kind of epitomizes how his life has been, exposing and exploring secrets and pulling aside the veil. And I see here he's got Moon conjunct Uranus in Libra. So Moon in Libra, you know, fair-minded, libertarian, open-minded kind of guy, and being conjunct Uranus again gives him this huge restlessness and emotional firecracker power and huge levels of curiosity and intense desire to kind of keep going, keep discovering. The spirit of adventure is very strongly aroused in him. And yet it also, he's had a couple of contentious divorces. Well, not only one divorce. So that's Uranus, Moon, yeah, divorce. I guess he'll clock up a few more divorces before his time is up there. Pluto here in the 6th house is a lot about research as well, and Saturn there in the 3rd shows the attention to detail he has, because he does do an enormous amount of reading, and Saturn there shows this huge desire to keep accumulating information and to really grind through really boring, dry stuff to ferret out the important details. He has shown a huge capacity to absorb, assimilate, and disseminate information throughout his life. So I think that Saturn in the 3rd is quite accurate there. His ruling planet, Mars, being Aries rising, is in Taurus, and I think that's all his determination, also his conservatism and patriotism there too. And also some, a lot of success with money, with Mars in Taurus in the 2nd house. He knows how to bring it in. He knows how to hustle, right? He keeps that money flowing. He keeps that ship afloat, which is incredible. So, what's going on with his chart now? Well, as you know, Pluto is just going into 26 degrees of Capricorn. So Pluto is conjunct Venus right there. So he's got Venus in Capricorn, Pluto is conjunct, and we know at the moment his reputation is absolutely under attack. Venus rules his house of lawsuits, and we know he's undergoing a lawfare. So that's a big attack. Obviously, his relationship is under a huge amount of strain. We do know that his wife was, I don't want to get too private, but he did mention on air that his wife was having mental issues. Who could blame her at the beginning of the year? So the marriage is obviously difficult as well. And Venus rules Taurus, his house of money. So Pluto, this is devastating his financial affairs, his financial security. He's being decimated financially. So you can see that all playing out. Venus also in the sign of Capricorn, so lots of signs of trouble with money, lawsuits, and this is the house of enemies. Okay, so there you go. And we also know that Pluto, not only is it conjuncting Venus, it's also squaring Uranus and Moon, which are here in the house of legal battles and of enemies. So you can see his enemies are fully out to attack him, and the lawsuits aren't going to be going away yet. He does say there's another one up in Connecticut, so they won't be going away. And again, I see a lot of trouble for the marriage, unfortunately. Sorry, Alex, with those two things. I don't know how much more his wife can stand it. So, because obviously 7th house of marriage, and Moon and Venus connected with marriage as well. Moon also connected to his resources and money, and his whole business plan is under threat. Okay, now we also know that Sun is the Saturn, transiting Saturn, is conjunct his Sun. So he's at the end of a 30-year cycle. So when did he set InfoWars up? About 30 years ago, and now it's facing I wouldn't want to say it would go under, but you know, Saturn, it's a 30-year cycle. Things that started 30 years ago could end. I suppose InfoWars as we know it may end, and it may morph into something else. So this sort of shows the whole bankruptcy thing going on. It also shows a pivotal time in his life. So this is like a really watershed moment for him personally, you know, in terms of his ambitions, where he saw his life going. But it also shows grit, determination, and fight. But Saturn will move away from his Sun, and will go, when it goes retrograde, well, it's retrograde now, then it'll turn direct, move back past his Sun, but then it will conjunct Jupiter. So I'm wondering if that could bring some renewed luck, because Saturn conjunct Jupiter is a fairly prosperous sign. So maybe he has, I remember he said to Milo that behind the kind of, what did he call it? Behind the Death Star, there's another Death Star. I think he has a major backup plan. So as devastating as this is going to be, I think he's got a major backup plan, and that'll kick in when Saturn moves past Jupiter. So I think he's built in a safety net. Look, he predicts things for a living. He must have known this was coming, and I think he's built a safety net, and I think he will see some more financing coming in, but it could be a while, maybe only next year. I hope it's not too late, but I think it's interesting that he's at the Saturn cycle. Yeah. That's so crucial. So we've looked at Pluto, and wait a minute, Neptune is busy too, because Neptune in Pisces is squaring Saturn in the 3rd house, right? So if you think about it, the 3rd house is about information, and he's being accused of lying and spreading misinformation, represented by Saturn. So Neptune, is disinformation. So Neptune here in his 12th house, squaring Saturn, a threat to his security, a lack of confidence. He's taking this really hard, very hard on his nerves, a lot of anxiety and nervous complaints. He really needs a rest and to take it easy. Like I say, burnout is a problem. If you look here, Neptune is on his south, the Saturn here is on his south node. It's almost like he is Atlas. He carries a collective, he's carrying a lot on his shoulders. It's like he carries the collective weight of responsibility to deliver the message. And it's almost like he has to be the scapegoat. It always has to be him. It's through him being persecuted that eventually other people will wake up. And a lot of people are, because they say, wait, if this can happen to him, they're coming after you next. So, you know, that's just, I think, very indicative of a hell of a lot. Yeah, so I was rambling there, but what I'm saying is it's almost like he carries the weight of a collective karma. And I also think the more bad the elites do to Alex, the more it's going to come back on them. The more they do to him, the more it's going to wake other people up. It's going to totally backfire. I think Saturn on his south node also shows that he brought a lot into this world that he had to put right. Maybe he was one of the elites in a last life. I mean, a lot of us might have been, I guess. But it's almost like he had to correct a karma, and he's done more than anyone could have done. And so, yes. I don't know if I had anything else. Saturn rules, what house does it? Oh, yes, of course, Neptune is square Saturn. Saturn rules his 10th house of career. So it is putting his whole life into doubt. His future is incredibly in doubt at the moment. And that could also signify the bankruptcy, because, of course, Saturn, Neptune, bankruptcy. He does really need to watch his health at the moment as well, in terms of nerves, anxiety, and he needs to be cautious in traveling as well. Yeah, I think that's a very interesting reading. And obviously it's a sympathetic reading because I do believe that he does a lot of good. Oh, by the way, look, he's got Mercury in Pisces in the 12th house, the house of also what's subversive, undercover, I guess, conspiracies and plots and agendas. He just kind of innately grasps this. And he says he's got intuition. He has got a gut feel. And of course, as we know, he's quite spiritual, but in a religious sense. So definitely he does have a lot of powers of perception and ESP. I think that's how he's able to draw it all together, because another person would have all this information, but they'd be overwhelmed by it. But I think he collates it very well, and he has an innate understanding of how it all fits together. Yes, I understand a lot of people don't think he goes far enough, and they moan about the Chi-Com thing, where he says, not really the Chi-Coms, but as I say, he puts enough information out there for people to make up their own minds. I'm not really going to look at the solar arcs because I felt that the transits were sweet in their accuracy, and I do sense Alex is going to come through this. I know a lot of people, they say, oh, he's got so much more money, he's got 200. So what if he has? I hope he does, actually, because Joe Rogan's got $1 billion, hasn't he? And I don't think Joe Rogan is much of a friend to Alex. I think he should boot him out, because what's Joe Rogan doing to help? And what all these people do to help? I'm not keen on Rogan. I think he's a plant, and I think if he doesn't help Alex out, well, he's no friend, and if I was Alex, I wouldn't have anything more to do with him. Thanks very much. And Joe Rogan's got a hell of a lot of money. Why is he not being kicked off? Why is no one going for him? Somehow the fact that they go so hard at Alex makes me believe that he is thoroughly authentic, and I'm not wrong. I mean, I go with my gut with these people, as you know, and I have complained about a lot of people, like I just said, Rogan and that brand person, Russell, and loads others who I just don't buy. And I've always felt Alex has been in this a long time, like David Icke, but I think Alex nails a lot more. I think David Icke has modeled an awful lot of what he said on H.G. Wells and Bertrand Russell and Orwell, and he kind of pieced together what was going to go on. And when sometimes when David Icke gets a question like, okay, now who's really at the center of this? And Alex has asked him that question, and then it's like, yes, but what's reality really? That chair you're sitting on is not really a chair, and it's all perception, and this is Wakiko, and then he drifts off into New Age babble. And I feel Alex doesn't generally do that. I mean, he rants about 1 million things in an hour, right? But yeah. Okay, I'm giving I'll always give him a break, and I have a soft spot for him. And I certainly feel sorry for what he's going through, and I've often looked at him and think, Alex, lose some weight and take it easy, because he just doesn't look like he's looking after himself. But as I said, to run that business operation and to do all the research, it's too much for one person, right? And so anyway, that's Alex's chart. As I say, I didn't know the time, so I'm guessing on the Aries. I explained my reasons for guessing on the Aries. And maybe we can come back to it sometime. But yeah, I think that's long enough now, and I hope you guys enjoy that. Got a few shorts coming, which I feel are quite successful, because I can just bam out a couple of information really quickly. Take care, everyone. Have a safe weekend. Don't get too sunburned, and enjoy.